Welcome, everyone. I'm Lisa Weber. I'm the acting superintendent for the Suffern Central School District, and it's my pleasure to be here tonight to talk a bit about our reopening plans. I'm joined tonight by Dr. Castaldo, who's been leading our reopening team, and together we will have a tremendous amount of information for you. We do ask that you hold your comments and questions. We do have a presentation prepared, which includes a lot of important information, addresses many of the questions that we received from the parent survey. And once we've concluded with our presentation, then we will be happy to answer any questions you post in the comments. Once again, we're really glad that you could join us tonight. We know this is a hard time. You're going to get a little more information tonight than you've had before, but there will still be many details that we can't share yet, that we just don't know the answers to yet. So without further ado, I'm going to ask Dr. Castaldo to share the information from the reopening team.
So welcome everyone, as Mrs. Weber said. Real excited to be here, really excited about the number of parents we have participating tonight. We started our first meeting, and this is meeting number 3. We started our first meeting, I want to say around 50 parents. We moved up the second meeting to about 75 to 100 parents, and now today we had so many requests to participate in tonight's meeting that we had to do it in a different format. That worked out really well though, because it meant that Mrs. Weber and I could be here together. As you can see, we are socially distanced, although we both have a mask, just in case. We have 2 support staff here with us who are also socially distant but wearing masks as well. So we're really excited to be here to share with you some updates on what the reopening team has been doing. Okay, so our agenda for today, welcome and introductions, you've already heard. We're going to review the goal of the team. We're going to review the timeline, the guidance and what it all means. We're going to look again at those 3 options, and all of these pieces will go rather quickly. And then we're going to talk about considerations we have to have in place to make decisions moving forward. So the goal, again, our goal is to craft a reopening plan that enables a smooth transition to and between the 3 options we need to plan for. And again, those are traditional, blended, and remote learning environments. It's the anticipation that we may need to move fluidly and flexibly between all 3 of those next year. We're not really sure. We'll be doing that with guidance from the governor and medical personnel like the Department of Health and the CDC. So we need to plan for all 3 so we can make that movement. Our timeline again. Is the timeline up? Okay, so our timeline. This is the timeline that we're working on, and you can see we are about halfway through. We're a little bit more than halfway through. On July 16th, rather than the July 13th, we actually got the guidance from New York State Ed and the Board of Regents on what our plan needed to look like. That was a 145-page document, but we're kind of distilling that and working through that with the teams. So we're right at July 16th. By July 31st, which is next Friday, we will be submitting our plan to the state. As of this point, we are still waiting for recommendations from the teams, and then we will be meeting with the core team of principals and central administrators to make the decisions that will craft the plan that's submitted on July 31st. So everything that you hear tonight will be ideas that we have and thoughts that we have based on the guidance, but nothing is a firm decision as of yet. The members of the team, so you have an idea of who's making these recommendations and these decisions. We've talked a lot about who's already on here, different administrators, different medical personnel. We have teachers and faculty on here. We have over 100 parent and community members who have participated. We have Board of Ed members. We have approximately 50 students or so, some of which have sent in ideas, some of which will be on the student meeting tomorrow. Those invites have gone out for the student meeting. If you didn't receive yours, please email me again so we can send it to you. Or if you'd like to participate as a student, if your child would like to participate, please email me before tomorrow for that. That meeting, again, is tomorrow at 1 o'clock. And then we sent out a parent survey last meeting, and we were very pleased to have gotten over 1,600 responses to the parent survey. And the answers to that are informing our decisions as well. Let's go over real quickly again the governor's metrics as to whether we'll be reopening in September or not. We're there? Let me take a breath. I can see Mrs. Weber out of the corner of her eye going, stop, take a breath. So thank you. The governor's metrics, again, right now Rockland County does fall within the metrics to be able to reopen in September. We are in phase 4. Our infection rate right now, as of the last I looked this afternoon, was at 1.1%, and it has to stay below that 5%. So we are still there right now to open. The governor will give us his firm decision the first week of August, sometime that first week, and then that may change, but we're awaiting that decision to know for sure. The next 2 slides in the presentation, and you're going to be able to access this presentation so you can look it over as well, is the Board of Regents guidance. So we have slide number 7 and then slide number 8, if we can move to that one. Both of those are the Board of Regents guidance on reopening. Again, this is based on their 145-page document that they gave us. What we've done is link that document to the reopening portion of our website, that reopening page that you can access. So feel free to look at the document and read through it, read through different sections if you'd like. It is organized by section, things like health and safety, technology, instruction, special services. So you can look at any of those portions if you'd like to. And then we have the 3 options we're considering. So the 3 options are traditional, and that team is being led by Dr. Billy Castellane and Dr. Andrew Trust. We have the blended option or hybrid option, which is being headed by Pat Breen with Angela Aguilar and Dr. Teresa Ivy. And then we have the robust remote, which is headed by Sue Pario, our Director of Instruction. Those 3 options, we need to submit plans for all 3 of them to the regents on July 31st, and we need to be able to show how we will move in between the 3 options and also have continuity of learning and instruction between the 3 options. Okay, let's get to some new information. What we know and what we've learned. And what we know and what we've learned from the guidance. We've learned from work that the people here in Suffern Central have done, and we've learned from the parent survey that you all responded to, or 1,600 of you. We know that classrooms will look very differently in September for either the traditional or the blended option. Those 2 options are the ones where students would be in school, in person, and those classrooms will look very differently. Let's take a look at that right now. So we prepared one of the classrooms. We prepared one of the classrooms in our buildings. This is one of the elementary classrooms. This is what a classroom looks like, allowing for the 6 feet of social distancing that is required. As you can see, all of the soft surfaces have been taken out of the room. So by that I mean, if there was a reading nook with a rug, if there were beanbag chairs, if there were curtains, if there were any soft items whatsoever. Some of that new furniture we have that's quite nice for students to sit on, the ottomans and stuff, they're all soft surfaces. They've all been taken out of the room. They're hard to sanitize and keep clean. As you can see, everything that's left are the hard surfaces, the things that we can use UV light or sanitizer on. Additionally, the desks are 6 feet apart and spread apart enough that students would be able to walk up to the student's desk or walk around the room if needed. Anytime a student is walking around, they would need to be wearing their mask. So they're going to be wearing their mask at their seat. They will have mask breaks, but in order to walk around, they would definitely need their mask. Now this is 3 different views of the same classroom in order to give you different angles of the classroom and show you. But I'm sure you can tell by looking at all 3 that we can fit approximately 15 desks in the standard classroom. So all of the classroom sizes are different around Suffern Central. We have calculated the square footage of each of the classrooms, and we have then figured the number of occupants in each room. This room actually has 15 desks. That allows for the 1 teacher desk and 14 students. So let's go back to our what we know slide. And we can see again, those classrooms are going to look very different. Beside that, we know that we can bus students within the social distancing guidelines as provided by the Department of Health, which includes wearing a mask at all times, boarding the back of the bus first, and then when we're unboarding, boarding from the back forward. From the front forward, so that students are not walking past each other. While we can do that, we know from the survey that many parents plan to drive their children to school. That, of course, will ease those busing and transportation issues. Students will be wearing masks and staff will be wearing masks at most times in the school buildings. As I mentioned before, there will be mask breaks, but for the majority of the time, students will be wearing masks, and especially when they are moving around the building, moving around their classroom, any sort of activities on the bus, they would be having the mask on at all times. We do know, as you could see from the classroom, we can fit approximately 14 students in most of our classrooms. Some classrooms can fit a touch more, some of them actually fit less. Due to that, we would not be able to bring in every student every day for in-person instruction. We would need to cohort the students in order to bring them in. Now, when we ask that question on the survey, the community, you families have very different ideas about, and opinions about traditional versus blended versus full remote learning. So there's no way we're making everyone happy with any of the choices we have to make. To be honest, about 40% of the people want one thing, 40% of the families want another thing, 20% have very different ideas altogether, and so those are the things that need to be considered in making decisions regarding reopening in September. The teams at this point are looking at that information and coming up with their best recommendations that they will make next week, again, to that core group of principals and district leadership. Our goal when students are in the building is to minimize movement. So that may mean at times lunch is in a student's classroom, at times music or art or any FLES, any of those specials would be coming to the cohort of students in the classroom rather than the students moving through the building and going to an art room or a FLES room. That would minimize the movement. We are considering and looking carefully at using the cafeterias, the gyms, and any outdoor areas for instruction and classroom breaks. In fact, at this point, Facilities has purchased 2 canopies, those canopies you see outside, canopies for each of the elementary buildings and the secondary buildings, and 2 much larger canopies, 1 each for the secondary buildings, so that we have more space outside for instruction. Outside is considered better for the students. In those warm months, we definitely can use that to give us some movement breaks, and it helps the students have a much better learning experience. Throughout all of this, our focus has been on building relationships with you as families, and also building relationships with the students when they are in school. It's essential that we build those relationships so that we keep them engaged afterwards. Okay, let's talk a little bit about facts.
So facts were the frequently asked questions, of which we received many from the parent survey, and just questions we've received in all different areas.
So why don't we stop for a minute and see if anything new came in that we should answer, and then we do have lists of questions, right?
Well, we did ask folks to hold off. We're gonna answer
Okay.
these first, because
Okay.
these were the common questions that came up, and then we'll invite anyone to put more questions in the comments for YouTube. So we kind of have 4 buckets of places. Health and safety, which Dr. Cristaldo will talk about, and then transportation, technology, and teaching and learning, which I'll take a few minutes to talk about. So if you want to talk a bit about health and safety.
So health and safety, I know foremost in many parents' minds were children being required to wear masks, and yes, they will need to wear masks most of the time. Additionally, staff will be wearing masks. So a further question was, well, where are we getting the masks for the staff and the students? We are encouraging everyone to send their child in with a mask, and a cloth mask such as this is fine, or if you have those paper ones. But also, we will have supplies of masks on hand for both students and faculty. We will also have kind of more intensive PPE supplies on hand for the nursing staff, meaning face shields, gloves, gowns, if a student comes in who is suspected of having an infection. Social distancing will be maintained to the best extent possible with students. As you could see from the classroom picture, we are placing the desks far enough apart that students will be seated at those, and that will help them get a sense as to how far they need to be from each other. Additionally, there will be markers on the floor, much like you see right now if you go into a store and you're standing in line. There will be markers on the floor to help students space themselves out. They'll be taught that adage of, if you're 2 arm lengths apart, they're little, so we need to go even further apart for children, but we will be working on protocols and teaching them social distancing. Hand washing will be a protocol as well, and there will be hand washing breaks and hand washing built into the time of the day so that students are encouraged to do that. Children with fever. We are required by the Board of Regents and the Department of Health to have daily temperature checks of both students and faculty. You will be encouraged to do that temperature check at home before your child is sent to school. If a child arrives at school with a fever, because we will have the ability to check at school as well, they will be in the nurse's office in isolation so that you can pick them up. But they will be required to do a daily temperature check. Additionally, you will be asked to fill out for your child periodically the screening questionnaire. Faculty and any visitors to the building will be required to fill out the screening questionnaire every time they come to the building. So faculty would be doing that every day before work. It's similar to the questionnaires you're probably filling out right now if you take your child to the doctor or if you're going to, let's say, the hair salon or something like that, those types of questions, those types of questionnaires. I'm reading really quickly. If you need to keep your child home for one of the number of symptoms, that would be marked in attendance as a home illness, a home excused illness, and then your child would be on a full remote program at that point. Contact tracing will be carried out in conjunction with the Department of Health. We're required to collaborate with them. So the minute we are aware of a potential exposure or an actual exposure in the school buildings, we are required to call the Department of Health, and they will step us through the correct process to follow. Additionally, we'll be working closely with our medical director and our nursing coordinator to effect contact tracing in the best way possible. Obviously, by using cohorts of students, we're kind of containing the contact tracing numbers that we have to call, and that is considered to be the best practice in contact tracing for the students and for the faculty. Your child will be sent home immediately if they show symptoms, so we will isolate them at the school. Each of the buildings will have their own separate isolation area that is monitored by an adult for your child to wait for you to pick them up, because we will need to isolate them if they show symptoms, and we would expect that parents would pick up their child right after being called. We would not be providing the required COVID testing. That would be something that would be done again in conjunction with the Department of Health, and they would be handling that part of the process. I think I've covered almost all of them. Do you have any?
Just to touch on like sanitizing the building.
Okay, so the buildings are going to be sanitized and cleaned each day at the end of the day, as our custodians have always done. And we're working on developing protocols for a more deeper cleaning on off days when students are not in attendance.
What about the bathrooms?
The bathrooms will be cleaned as well.
After I read it, we don't know yet.
We're waiting for the recommendations from the Department of Health regarding whether we need to clean the bathrooms and sanitize after each use, or if there's some other protocol that they want us to follow.
Okay. What about the air filtration ventilation systems?
Okay, so that's been a question that has come up. I think it's come up because I guess the malls were required to have a certain type of ventilation system. While we're not required to have that, we can meet the standards of that by having, it's a UV light type situation. And of course, facilities would be better at explaining this than I am, but a UV light type situation that's put near the, or attached to the ventilation systems that kills all of the germs in the ventilation system. So we're currently piloting that program, and we'll be expanding that to all of the buildings as well. And that would be done in conjunction with Department of Health and the architect's approval.
And same with other common areas like the cafeteria or how.
Okay, so we're still looking for recommendations on the use of the cafeteria. The traditional team is working on those kind of nuts and bolts issues. So they are reviewing all of the guidelines as well as all of the capability of the food service staff and of the custodians for cleaning those cafeterias before we decide whether we will be using them daily for student lunches or whether we will just be using that as an off room for students who need a break. And we will know how often we're cleaning once those decisions are made. So we'll have a better idea about that probably in about 2 weeks. Any other like health?
Any other health or safety?
Okay,
You can always come back to
We
it.
can always come back.
Yeah.
Okay, so I do have just a couple of technology questions here that I wanted to answer. Someone asked whether the school will be providing laptops. We worked very hard through the spring to get every student a device if they needed a device, and we will be working to do that again. So if anyone out there still needs a device or internet access, you're just going to be asked to let us know and we'll be able to provide that. We also are looking to set up some sort of a repair room, a repair spot, so that you can easily drop the device off if something happens and pick up a new one. So that'll make that all a bit better. Someone's asking about a better platform to deliver online lessons. So I'm not sure.
I can address that
Okay.
a little bit. I'm not sure what they mean by better.
Right.
There are
I don't know
some,
the age group.
yeah, there are some higher quality programs, but what we would gain with them in maybe picture quality or sound quality, we're likely to lose in security. So we want to stay with our Google Meets because that's the only platform on which we can control that only Suffern Central students are logging into. So the security outweighs a little bit of if there's a better picture quality in another program. So for now, we have every intention to stick with Google.
Okay, and then there's some question about printing and printing options, I guess, when you're at home. So that's something I'm going to have to talk to technology more about, but we will find out about printing worksheets and not having a printer, so we'll look into that as well.
And I think that the answer to that will likely to be using different apps so that you don't actually have to print it out, but that you have writable apps, writable content that, and so part of that's professional development, making our teacher aware of those programs, making the kids aware of those programs so that they can use programs, particularly with the iPads. It's very easy to download a document and just write on it with the pen, and some different options on a Chromebook or on a computer. So a few questions about transportation. So what will be different about riding the bus? The biggest thing that will be different about riding the bus is that all students must wear a mask. That's not an option. The student must have the mask on when they walk onto the bus. They must keep it on the entire time they're on the bus, and they take it off. They don't take it off until they disembark. Dr. Castaldo spoke about kids will fill in seats from the back to the front, and then when they get off the bus, they'll go from the front to the back, and this way kids aren't crossing each other's paths. For the most part, kids will sit alone. Siblings or children living in the same house together can sit together, since they're already living together, but other than that, they'll be alone. And there's another interesting rule, and it has to do with the safety of the bus, is there is no hand sanitizer allowed on the bus. So students are not allowed to take out hand sanitizer when they get onto the bus or at any point during the ride. If it's in their backpack, it can stay there, but it can't come out on the bus. And that's a rule that we were given from the state. The buses will be cleaned. The details of that, what products they're using, we will include that in the plan. There's a few areas where some of these details we're not prepared to give every detail about every product that we're using, but that will all be included in the plan that we submit on July 31st. So the details of the bus cleaning, the cafeteria cleaning, the sanitizing the bathrooms, all of those details, to the extent possible, will be available in our July 31st plan. The other question was, would we consider letting 11th graders with licenses and cars drive to school and park on the high school campus? Dr. Castaldo had mentioned earlier that we cannot, from a capacity standpoint, we cannot fit all of our high schoolers in the building and maintain 6 feet of social distance. Therefore, we will have to go to some type of cohort at the high school, which likely means only about half the kids will be attending on any given day. If only half the kids are attending, then we'll have room for the 11th graders who do have cars and can drive to, most likely, park at the high school. That will also alleviate a little bit of the number of kids on the bus.
Okay, bus questions.
Okay.
Do we know how many kids we're allowing on the buses at a time?
I don't have an exact number, and sometimes it'll have to do with how big the bus is and how many siblings are on the bus, because siblings can sit together. So if you have a busload of siblings, there may be more kids than a busload that has no siblings on it.
And what about if, how is the bus schedule gonna run if there has to be a limited number of kids on the bus?
Well, if we're only bringing in half the kids each day, that automatically means there's only gonna be half the number of kids on the bus, maybe, give and take a little bit here and there. But if only half the student body is coming in on any given day, then the buses would not be anywhere near the capacity that they typically are.
However, the bus runs may be staggered a little to allow for the additional time it's going to take to embark and disembark.
That was the next question.
And all of that. So we're still working on what the staggered times would be.
And we all know that at some of our schools, we have buses that arrive early and on time, and a few that stroll in late. And we're often at the elementary schools pretty strict about not letting kids get off if their bus comes early, but that's something we may have to, work out the details of, because if the bus is the first one to arrive, but it's 3 minutes before the official start time, well, if we get the kids started coming off that bus, that'll help us down the line.
Any plans yet to how that's gonna look, how you're gonna separate the kids walking into the building, just getting off the bus?
Well, if you imagine that they're coming off the front seats one at a time, it does take a couple seconds for them to, come down the stairs. So it may be, row 1 stand up, come out, row 2 stand up, come out, that kind of a thing. We don't have every detail of that worked out. On the bus's side, we'll work with the bus company on that. And then once they come off the bus, we'll work with the staff, bus monitors, people doing bus duty.
Okay.
Anything
Okay.
else in transportation?
There's some.
So one of the
Oh
questions.
wait, here's one. What if a child gets on a bus and doesn't have a mask?
So they won't be allowed on the bus without a mask. We've been asked, obviously, to provide a small number of masks on each bus, so that if a child doesn't have one, the bus driver will make sure they put one on to get on the bus.
What about non-public busing?
Same rules
It's the
apply.
same protocol.
For non-public busing, the same rules apply. They have to wear a mask on the bus.
And many of the protocols actually for the bus are, yes, from the regents, but also from the Department of Health. And all of us need to follow all the same.
Does a face guard and a mask mean the same thing?
No,
No.
a face shield does not. A face shield is the plastic that comes over, and in the cases where students and staff are told they have to wear masks, they actually have to have a mask on. In some cases, they may also have a face shield on, but a face shield does not replace a mask.
Are the buses being shared between schools or with other schools, and what's the protocol to clean?
The buses will be shared between schools as they always have. We have a 4-tiered system. We have high school, middle school, early schools, late schools. So we've always had a 4-tiered system. We don't have the details yet on all of the cleaning that will go on. That will be included in the July 31st plan.
And what's the plan for ensuring that students and teachers and staff wear masks appropriately and properly?
Lots and lots of reminders.
And we'll
Video.
we'll begin the year with
Videos.
actual teachings on wearing the mask. There'll be lots of reminders. I anticipate that we will be sending videos and posting videos beforehand. It is definitely recommended that students practice wearing their masks before they come to school. So I'm sure in your home, they're not wearing masks all the time. You might want to start with short bursts of mask wearing so that they get used to it before they attend school.
All right, now the biggie, teaching and learning.
You want to start?
Yeah, I'll start. So we have, both Dr. Castaldo and I have mentioned that we cannot fit all of our students in with social distancing. So as seen in our survey, and in the blended learning groups, we have talked about different options. I would say at this point, the option of alternating weeks is pretty much off the table. That was by far the third option of the parents, not well-liked among the staff and the committees either. I mean, there's some pros to it, but overall it is, I would say at this point, it's off the table. We are still considering the AB schedule versus the AABB schedule. And just maybe to explain what that would look like a little bit, an AB schedule means there's Group A and Group B, and they alternate. So if Monday's Group A, Tuesday's Group B, Wednesday's Group A, Thursday's Group B, Friday's Group A. Starts over the next week with whoever's turn it is. So that's an AB schedule, which was actually the first choice of the parents. A very strong second choice was the AABB schedule. And what that schedule is that Group A would go for 2 consecutive days. Say, for example, Monday, Tuesday. Then Group B would go for 2 consecutive days. Say, for example, Thursday, Friday. Oh, Mrs. Weber, you forgot about Wednesday. I didn't forget about Wednesday. In an AABB model, we're considering having Wednesday as a type of flex day. I don't want to go into a lot of detail about what that would be. The advantage to some degree is if we have the same group of kids on AA, and for example, on a flex Wednesday, if everybody say we're remote, we could really do a deep clean of the buildings before the new group comes in. Group B comes in on Thursday and Friday, and then over the weekend do another deep clean. So there's some advantages in that respect. We absolutely have to work out the details of what this flex looks like. There was back, Dr. Castaldo didn't mention it, but back on slide 8, which was some of the guidance from the Board of Regents, the Board of Regents has talked about something they call substantive daily interaction. And what that means is that their expectation is that every day students have daily contact with their teacher. Hooray, hooray. I know many of you have asked for that. That was probably the most consistent piece of feedback we received last spring, that every day kids should have contact with their teachers, and the state is saying that now too. So no matter what, when we're hybrid, if it's your kid's day to be home, there will still be that substantive daily contact. If we're 100% remote, because the governor tells us we have to be 100% remote, there will still be that substantive daily contact. So that's a big difference to what we did last spring. And so that's something we heard you, the state heard you, we recognize the importance of that, and so that's something that we'll weave into the details of these plans.
Here's an interesting question about holidays and how that would figure into if there was an AABB plan.
So we actually looked at that, and the first reaction is, oh, well, if there's Columbus Day is on a Monday, so we'll just have Group A go Tuesday, Wednesday, and Group B go Thursday, Friday. In one of the groups I was in, I was listening in on, they actually counted the days, and I think the Monday, Tuesday group has 11 holidays, and the Thursday, Friday group has 10. So it surprisingly was actually very even.
What do you think about like the timing of school? Is it going to be a full school day? Is that shifting?
So right now in our hybrid plans are planned for a full school day. Because it looks like students would only be in 2, at most 3 days a week, it's hard to say that they're only gonna be in 2 or 3 days a week and then we're gonna make the day shorter. So if there was a way we could get all the kids in, then there's some leeway with that, but because they're only gonna be in a couple days a week, it's hard to say that they're really gonna have a shorter day on those days.
Will there be synchronous classes during remote learning, so like when the AAs are home, will they be able to?
So the details of that are being worked out now by the blended committee, and we're expecting their recommendations in the next day or two, and those details, will be shared next week in the plan.
What about siblings attending different schools or different grades? How's that?
So for the most part, we expect the divide to be alphabetical for that reason. Obviously, if two siblings have different last names, one in the first half of the alphabet and one in the second half of the alphabet, we will accommodate for that. The families will just have to let us know that. But that's one of the main reasons for, splitting alphabetically, is so that older siblings are home and can help care for the younger ones.
And I think that question also referred to one of the ones we had on the survey. So right now, with the plans we're considering at this point, students will be attending the schools they were attending. So the only way siblings aren't together is if they are different ages, meaning elementary and middle or high school. Those would be the only times.
But they would still be on that A, they'd all be.
Yes,
Yeah.
they'd still be on that plan, so that we keep those siblings together that way.
And will the AABB days be the same every week, like always Monday, Tuesday, or Thursday, Friday, or? will
That's
it-
not decided yet.
Okay.
And we haven't necessarily decided which one of those plans we're going with. They're both still in consideration. They both have pros and cons.
Is
But
there,
we did hear that from the parents quite a bit, that what they want is just a consistent schedule.
yeah,
So our goal is to make that schedule and let you know what it would be by the start of school year, so you can plan for your family as well.
oh, yeah, we'll get there. Anything else related to that? Okay, how about,
So I did have a question here on the teaching and learning about some of the students that maybe go to out-of-district programs, like BOCES C-Tech, those vocational programs that some of our children are in. And that's going to be very much worked in conjunction with Rockland BOCES. They are putting together their plan as well. Their plan and their team members have been meeting with our team members and the district-wide team, which, if you recall back at the beginning of the parent meetings, we talked a little bit about how there was a county district-wide team, and all of the plans, while not being exactly the same, are being worked at least to the point where we know what everyone else is doing and in conjunction with each other. And BOCES will be working with us to ensure that our students have those same opportunities that they had before.
what about, students with 504s and IEPs?
Okay, so students with 504s and IEPs will be attending school, and in whatever format, whatever of the options we're on, which obviously will be more like a blended hybrid or a full remote, whichever we end up with according to the governor, those IEPs and the 504s, accommodations, classes, related services, all of that will be provided as well. So that happened in the spring, and related services will happen similar to that if we're remote, and they will happen in person if we're in that blended hybrid environment. We'll make sure that all of those services happen on the 2 days that the student is attending school.
The other thing we'd like to consider, possibly for our youngest children and possibly for our neediest students, the ones who really disengaged last spring during remote learning, is the possibility of some students attending more than their 2 days a week. We have to, work through our numbers and figure out what we can accommodate. But there is a possibility that either our youngest students or our highest needs students have the opportunity to attend school more than those 2 days.
And if there's a question about referring a student, or if your child already has a 504 or an IEP, and you want more services or a program review of some kind, we're going to step through that process the same way we've always done. So it first starts with an email to your child's teacher, the building principal, or us here at Pupil Personnel Services, and all of the students will step through the process the way that we had before.
What about, art, music, gym, all of the,
Read my mind, I was just
Yeah.
thinking encores. So let's talk encore for a minute. Let's talk about art and FLES first. So in art and FLES, as Dr. Castaldo mentioned, the goal is to minimize movement. So it's very likely that a lot of art and FLES will happen with the teacher coming to the students in their room. Where possible, each child will have their own supplies. So instead of, a big box of colored pencils that they all grab a bunch out of, each student will have their own supplies, they're using their own colored pencils, their own, their own markers, their own scissors, etc. So that reduces movement. Music is a little more challenging. In the guidelines, there are the typical guideline for social distancing is 6 feet. For certain activities, the social distancing is 12 feet. And those activities include phys ed, if the students are doing anything aerobic, music, particularly if the children are singing, and wind instruments. So really anything, if you think about it, where their breath is going out with some amount of force. So either singing, wind instruments, or PE, the social distancing guidelines are 12 feet. So particularly in those areas, we would look to use our larger spaces. First of all, go outside whenever we can. So weather permitting, we want to do that outside. Secondly, use the gym for those spaces, possibly in, when the cafeteria is not being used for food service, if there's an opportunity to use a space there. And at the secondary schools, using the auditorium likely for band or chorus type activities, where we can really spread the kids out in the large auditoriums. But first choice for the most part is often going to be outside.
What about kids that don't have a 504 but still utilize like OT services, speech, math, extra math, things like that?
Okay, so that's all of our AIS and RTI students. Those students will again be tiered and put into those services as well. So it will be a matter, there'll be a lot of coordination and collaboration going on, but any student that is struggling in any way will be right away matched up with a provider to assist them in those areas. In fact, we're developing for the reopening of school MTSS, which is just a pump-up version of RTI. So it's multi-tiered systems of supports. We want to make sure that we have those in place, and we'll be evaluating students, universally looking at all of the students, then moving them up to a second tier or a third tier if needed. And that's going to take place along those academic areas, but also along the socio-emotional areas. One of the things we heard back from on the survey as well is that close to 50% of you saw some sort of behavioral or emotional change in your child due to the closure. They've been through a traumatic experience, as we all have been. When we reopen, we want to make sure that we're addressing those needs as well as any academic needs they may have. So we're going to be looking even more closely at the students at that universal level, looking at every single student to see where it is they need assistance and plugging in assistance in those areas right away. We also intend on keeping our Yale EI program going. Yale EI this year coming up was all about family engagement and giving you all of the tools that we've been using. So you'll be hearing more of that as well so that we can assist you at home with addressing students' needs and building that emotional language as a family.
Let's talk a little bit about the 100% remote option, and if there is a blended model, is there still a 100% remote option available to families, and what does that look like?
So I attended 2 meetings today, one with the Rockland County Superintendents and one with the Lower Hudson Council of Superintendents. So that's about 75, 80, 90 people in it. And the general consensus of that group of superintendents was that we will have to provide a remote option for those children whose families choose not to send them to school. We don't know exactly what that will look like yet. We're working on it. Remember, in our hybrid model, we do have half the kids home, at any given time. And so we'll have to work, if we're in the blended hybrid model, and we know from our survey that we have a number of families who do not intend to send their children back to school, we will define what that will look like. We're hoping to get a little more guidance on that. But we will do our best to put that plan in place in the July 31st overall plan.
What happens if someone tests positive, either a kid or a teacher? Do we have that?
So if someone tests positive, it would be similar to any sort of exposure if you were, let's say, at a meeting or anything like that. We will right away alert the Department of Health, the Rockland County Department of Health. They will step us through what are the right steps to take at that time. I think it's going to depend greatly on which student or staff member tested positive, what their cohort looks like, you know, how long they've had the COVID symptoms, but we will be relying on the Department of Health, our medical director, and our nurse coordinator to lead us through those pieces.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Yeah, let's see what we
I have a few questions from the other survey that I just wanted
Yeah.
to bring up. So lots of people have asked about Sacred Heart. I know, you know, there was a lot of disappointment around Sacred Heart closing. You know, that's our only parish right in Suffern. It's a school we all, you know, care deeply about, and many people have personal connections to, and it's disappointing that they're closing. With that in mind, a lot of people have suggested we use that space. So I have reached out to the Archdiocese. I have yet to hear back from them. So I don't, you know if that's a viable option. But, you know, just know that we are looking into it. I also asked boces to see if they could help us to get in touch with the right people. And they shared that when they have rented from the Archdiocese in the past, it has been a very expensive lease. And so if we even get to that point, that's something we'll have to consider. But just know that we heard you and we have looked into it, but we don't have any more information than that at this time.
So in addition to that, we did look into other community spaces if at all possible. For the most part, any of the other community spaces do not give us enough space to effectively move a group of students and allow for every student to attend every day. So those are cost prohibitive as well. We did look into what I had received a lot of information on was using tents. What we got instead were the canopies to use. We are able again to use, we right now have 15 small canopies, 3 big canopies to allow for that outside space use. Things like, in addition to that, things like the amphitheater in front of the high school can be used. So we're going to use those outside spaces as much as possible, as well as, again, what we spoke about, repurposing at times the cafeterias or the gyms to use for children to have bigger space, and we can fit some more students in at one time. But we haven't looked at all of those different community spaces at this point.
You want to go more through here?
Sure.
There's questions about middle school, lockers, orientations, all of that.
So all of the orientations are on hold till we hear from the governor. We have great plans, grand plans. We just want to make sure that the governor says it's okay. So assuming the governor lets us come in, if he tells us the first week of August that school's opening, then we believe we can hold our orientations. We will have multiple orientations. We will break them into more orientations so that we have smaller groups of kids coming in. So that goes for kindergarten, it goes for 6th grade, and it goes for 9th grade. So that our kids who are coming into new buildings will have an opportunity to see their building. 6th grade in the past, traditionally we've had 2 days, we might have 3 or 4 or 2 mornings and 2 afternoons, just to spread it out more so we have fewer kids in the space at a time. We're very excited about that. Our principals and our staff are eager to see our students. This is, for most of us, this is the longest we've ever been not in school. So we're excited to see everyone. I would also say that, we will be putting a lot of videos and other materials together in August. Right now, we are really focused on putting this plan together. There's 145 pages of guidance. Who knows how long our actual plan is going to be, but that is our focus. This week, next week, we're focused on planning. The first week of August, the governor is going to come out and let us know really where we stand, and then the rest of August is putting this all into action. So I know we've gotten a lot of requests for videos and things like that. It's coming. We just want to make sure that we have the right information and everything in place.
Yeah.
So I think the other question was about lockers and the use of lockers.
Yeah, and high school and moving classes and kids eating on the floor and things like that.
So unit lunch at the high school will not, for the most part, involve kids eating on the floor if we can help it. Unit lunch at the high school will involve eating, some will eat in the cafeteria and using outside, using classrooms, again, the gym, the auditorium if possible. When the kids can't go outdoors, I'm sure we'll have to use some of those other large spaces.
Will there be cleaning, will the kids be rotating through classrooms at the high school and middle school?
It is likely that the kids will shift classes, there are hardly two high school schedules that are the same. So the kids really do need to move between classes, but remember, there'll likely only be half the student body in at any given time. We're gonna set up the hallways in a way that there's as little interaction as possible. And the kids will absolutely be masked in the hallway.
As you're thinking about solutions, what can the school district faculty recommend parents do? What can we do for our children to get the best care while they're in school or remote learning?
Dr. Castaldo also mentioned get them used to wearing a mask.
Right.
That's a biggie.
And hand washing and practicing social distancing, because it is difficult for a child to know what 6 feet really is, and this might work for them at least somewhat, but really getting them in that mindset now is really the best way to prepare for the school year.
And another thing, particularly for the little kids, but even in a way for the older kids. So, when we're in elementary schools, there's a lot of hugs in elementary school, and it's a good thing, Little kids come and they hug their teacher, they hug the principal, they're excited to be there. They hug each other. That's not something we can do. So, I would ask that parents help explain that to your children, but then also give your children a lot of hugs. Because even our older kids who are used to hugging when they see each other, bumping chests or, high-fiving, all of that type of contact needs to be minimized. So help us to help your kids minimize that, and then hug your kids again.
Awesome. Okay, what about, are we hanging Purell outside of every door of every room?
There will be hand sanitizer in every room, yes.
Will the students have to change for gym and wear masks for gym? Is the pool going to be open or closed?
Those are excellent questions that I don't have the answers to right now.
Okay. Someone asked what do the kids do when they're not in school? They're going to be learning, right?
Yes.
They're gonna be on remote instruction.
Is it an option to choose whether you want to send them some days and send them not? Like, so if we end up doing a hybrid model and you decide that you want to send your kid on one of the A days but not the other one, or
They would be marked, for whichever cohort they're in, they can only attend on those days. And if they don't attend, they would be marked absent.
But the kids that don't, so you would have to decide if you want it to be fully virtual or a part of the blended model. If you were fully virtual, you wouldn't be marked absent because you were.
There would be some sort of daily check-in.
Right, so each day there's a daily check-in, and there is still an attendance requirement that we're required to report to the state. So it would be expected that each child would check in each day.
And I think our assumption is that the default will be that they'll participate in the blended hybrid, and the exception will be that they're 100% remote. So the parents that want to keep their children home 100% remote, they will have to let us know that.
And we do fully understand that there may be students that need to be on the 100% remote. These are students who maybe in the past were on home instruction of some kind. Those parents, those students who need a medical excuse, that kind of information would be sent to Pupil Personnel Services, to me, and then we'd be evaluating that. That's different than the choice to go remote.
Is there an option of elementary attending every day?
So as we put in the survey, the only way we could have an elementary attend every day is if we reconfigured our elementary schools. That was not particularly well received in the survey. It would be a major commitment in a very short time and a very significant change, upheaval. It would be really significant in a really short amount of time. So I think that, and with the possibility that we could be open for 2 weeks and then go to 100% remote.
Right.
So it seems, right now, it feels to me like a very, very significant change in a very short time to make that happen. I did mention earlier about prioritizing our youngest students to possibly attend every day, and I think that's where our energies could be better spent, is looking at a way for our youngest students to be in school every day.
there's a lot of sports questions, so is there a general, what
So
can
the
you tell us
general
about sports?
sports statement is, the governor has postponed the beginning of fall sports season until September, I forget the date, 17th, 20th?
I thought it was 21st.
21st, maybe that's it.
The 21st.
So the governor has postponed everything until then, and so that's pretty much all we know about sports at this time.
And I do know that NISFA has some guidance out, and they were looking at 6 different possible scenarios, even with the postponement of sports. So I would look to them for guidance.
Yes, and they have that online,
Right.
and some of those scenarios are pretty interesting.
Oh, what, you know what was asked before, I didn't say anything about like high school labs, things of the nature where you kind of have to be,
Okay,
Yes.
so New York State is looking at the requirements for both hands-on and then virtual labs that would stand in the place of the hands-on labs, and we're waiting for more guidance from them on that. 'cause
But
that's
they
very
have
much-
indicated there will be flexibility in that.
okay. Will before care and after care be available?
So, and this goes back to another question that was asked earlier, that I thought about, and that's our facilities used by outside groups. Before care and after care is something that's an essential need for many families, and we would look to continue that. Likely, particularly at the beginning of the year, those will be the only outside groups, that will be using our facilities. When we let all kinds of outside groups use our facilities, we need to clean up after them. And we don't really want to run the risk of folks coming in at night and using our facilities, and then we have to clean up after that. We don't know what they brought in, we don't know if they followed, proper protocols. So there's definitely some consideration going to be to what outside groups can or cannot use our facilities. But the childcare options we currently have in the district, if those providers can continue to provide them, we anticipate working with them to help that happen.
Can you address the rumor going around that Suffern Central kids will be sent to other districts?
That is completely untrue. That is a pure rumor and speculation.
I can't even imagine how we would do that, because I believe we have some of the most space in the buildings as anyone, because we have that smaller enrollment and bigger buildings. I'm hearing that most districts can't fit their own, so they're not going to take ours.
Any thoughts on moving kids up with their teachers from last year?
We've had a lot of conversation at the elementary about looping, and for the most part, there won't be any looping. There might be 1 or 2 cases just because of class size where it happened. But for the most part, it won't, because what happens if everyone loops is then your 5th grade teachers go teach kindergarten.
Yeah.
And that's not always the best choice. So, for the most part, we won't be looping. The principals, of course, and the teachers have worked very hard, as they always do, to create classes where kids have friends and supports. And while they may not have the exact same class they had that last year, we always have the case where students have some friends in their new class. That's one of the beauties of having small elementary schools, is that we can always keep kids with some of their friends.
And let's remember that one of the things that the New York State Regents is requiring in their plan, and is something that is good pedagogy, and I know our teachers would do anyway, is spending those first couple of weeks that we are back in school reopened, building those relationships and that rapport with your child. So even though it's a new teacher, they're going to build that relationship really quickly with your child, so that they do feel comfortable in the class that they are in.
Okay, is there PD and other things happening so that teachers are learning how to teach virtually and online and live and all of that?
Yes.
So there's, do you wanna go?
You can go.
Okay, so there's been many PD offerings already. We do intend on turnkeying some of that PD for our teachers as well, but so that they get even more proficient at what they started learning in the spring. And I know that was a big upheaval for everyone. We joke all the time that I didn't even know how to do FaceTime before all this started, and
You've
look,
come a
now
long
we're
way,
doing,
Dr.
yes,
Gustavo.
now we're doing all of this, so we will be giving PD, even more increased PD for teachers on how to really become comfortable with that remote learning environment.
Okay.
And this summer, we've had PD offered by our lyric consultant, and also some of our teachers have been running sessions in areas of their expertise.
When students from cohort A are home for remote learning, will they be watching classmates in cohort B? Or are
That
they getting
teach-
the same
They
instruction?
they won't watch classmates because there's like privacy things about that. The exact details of that are being recommended to us tomorrow and Monday. So those details will be included in the plan next Friday.
So
But
by
rest
Friday, we
assured-
will have we will have the answers to what the live classes look like, what the hybrid looks like, all of that.
I don't know that it's by Friday,
Well, it's
because
by the
that's
plan.
tomorrow,
No,
right?
next Friday.
Oh, by next Friday,
Next
okay, I
Friday.
missed that. But just to
Um,
reiterate what Mrs. Weber said, even if we are live remote and students sitting at home are watching their teacher teach, the cameras would be situated as such that you wouldn't be seeing the other students in the class.
And they wouldn't be seeing you.
Right.
What about UPK?
UPK, we are actually still waiting on childcare resources. The last we had heard was from childcare resources is that they were going to hold a lottery in mid-July. I have not heard an update on that yet. So I did ask that question in one of my meetings this morning, so I am anticipating, hoping for an answer shortly.
What about finding out schedules, teachers, and all of that stuff? Is that gonna change? Do we know?
For the most part, no, it'll be the late August. I haven't spoken to the high school yet. They usually do it on the first day of school. I haven't spoken to them about that, so I don't know exactly what their plan is for that. The others usually send them out in late August.
Do you know how you're picking the groups if it's a blended model?
It'll likely be alphabetical.
Okay.
I'm not saying it's definitely gonna be alphabetical, but that's kind of the easiest way to do it. And ensure the sibling component.
What about what happens if kids don't wear masks?
We'll deal with that as we come to it. They'll be dealt with on an individual basis. That's an expectation of being in school, just like many other expectations.
And if they arrive at school without a mask because they don't have one, they will be given a mask.
But they'll be getting, the ones who come on the bus will get one on the bus if they don't have one.
Are the teachers also going to be on an AABB schedule, or are they gonna be all the time?
They'll be all the time because someone has to teach the other group.
They'll be teaching the AAs
Group
and
and
the
the
BBs.
in the same class, because they'll only have half their class at each time.
So essentially, if I have a 30
So what
child
does that
class,
mean with regards to infection and spreading of, like,
It means the
Right.
teachers are gonna maintain 6 feet of social distance and wear a mask with both groups.
okay.
And that's why again, that's a reinforcement of why it's important to do the social distancing and wear a mask.
Okay, there's a question about, devices that might be broken, technology devices, if we're borrowing them.
right, so, go ahead. So as I mentioned earlier, what we want to do is set up a kind of a tech station, a tech space where people can get devices fixed or repaired, turn them in, get a new one, and so that we can facilitate that a little easier. I believe we're talking about the middle school for that, but that's not a definite.
If we're open though, we can probably have a site in each building. It will, like, I wanna say one other thing about the devices. So it's funny, one of the questions that I asked pretty much every administrator in this district, was if we could go back to March 13, what would you do differently? And the most popular response was, have everyone take their device home that day. And so, you know, we are already one-to-one with iPads at the elementary school. We have the capability of being one-to-one with Chromebooks in our secondary schools, our middle school and our high school. So there is going to be an expectation that kids are bringing their device back and forth on the days they're coming to school, and they're bringing it home with them, because really, at any moment, we could be going fully remote. So there is an expectation, even for our youngest kids, that they're going to be bringing these devices back and forth. So they'll have them at home, but they'll also need to bring them when they come to school, because at school, there's no sharing of devices. Kids are using their own personal device. We're not using the computer labs in the way we used to in the past, so it's not, you know, getting, you know, eight sets of fingers on it during the course of the day. So kids are gonna need to have their device. That's another thing that parents can help with.
Is it possible for the teachers to switch classes instead of the students?
Sometimes, yes. That's probably very possible at the elementary level when the specialists come in. We talked about that. The middle school with the teams, there may be some ability to do that or not move everyone. The high school, it's nearly impossible just because the differences of people's schedules.
We talked about sports. What about band, marching band, any extracurricular high school clubs, things like that?
So many of the high school clubs and middle school clubs will be able to continue, either meeting virtually or meeting in large spaces. Marching band is a little trickier, and I know there's a meeting early next week about marching band. Again, that goes back to the issue of wind instruments needing 12 feet of distance. I am not an expert in marching band, so I look forward to hearing. I am sure Mr. Schwartz is going to come up with some way to do that. I look forward to hearing about it.
Is the district testing teachers and staff members?
The district
prior?
is not allowed to test.
Okay.
So that is in the guidance. It is very clear. The district is not allowed to test anyone. We're allowed to send people home and tell them to get tested, but we are not allowed to test anyone.
Lunch, free lunch, delivery of lunch, will that continue? What does that look like?
Yes, so we don't know exactly what it will look like, but in the hybrid model, obviously, kids who get their lunch will get their lunch on the days they're there. And then depending on which hybrid model we have, it may be that on their second day there, they bring food for the next several days. It may be that it's a delivery. We haven't worked out the exact detail of that yet, but the children will be fed.
And we continue to feed them over the summer. There are deliveries twice a week.
Yes, we continue, we deliver twice a week, but we deliver 5 days worth of breakfast and lunch. And still, any families that are interested in that, and you don't have to just be a free and reduced lunch, that's open to any Suffern Central students. You can sign up for that, the link is on the website. Right now, we're serving about 800 students.
Yeah. Switching gears a little bit, any news from the SAT, ACT world about those tests being waived or pushed back? I know they're scheduled testing dates for the fall.
Right, I know they're scheduled, and I'm not sure that they've made any decisions as of yet. I have heard that many of the colleges are going to waive looking at that for the requirements, but that's an individual college decision and an SAT, ACT decision, and those are not run by the school district, so not sure.
Someone just made a mention of if it's the same family with different last names, do we call
We'll
them?
absolutely take care of that. They'll just
Yeah.
let us know and we'll take care of that.
How are classes at the high school cleaned in between periods, if at all?
They would likely not be cleaned between every period. We do plan to have wipes at the door, so as, just like when you go to the grocery store, there's wipes at the door and you grab a wipe and you wipe down your cart. We'll have wipes at the door, kid can grab a wipe and they can wipe down their desk and their chair. They don't have to, they're not required to, we're not allowed to require them to, but they can choose to. We will have the materials there for them to choose to do that.
So that would be something that you as a family decide and instruct your child on what to do.
There's a question about school supplies and materials needed. Do we know what that looks like yet?
I know the elementary schools put out their lists. I would say to families, yes, when we're in session, we don't want kids sharing. So that's, so kids do need certain materials, scissors, they would need their own scissors, they would need, their own crayons or colored pencils or whatever it is, their own folders. But I would also say that if we're not sure, it's okay to hold off.
We have plenty of time right now
Yeah.
to figure that out.
Let's,
So
and
that's
and
something we will
definitely
let you
wait
know
till,
closer
definitely
to.
wait for the governor.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah,
Don't fire stuff.
don't feel pressure to buy school supplies before the governor even tells us whatever he's gonna tell us that first week of August.
And there's still some confusion about remote, when the hybrid model is happening, will there be remote learning happening on the days that they are home? And
Yes. So maybe I could describe it a different way.
yeah.
So Group A is in school on Monday. Group B is home on Monday. Group B will have Google Classroom assignments, they'll have work to do, they will have some type of substantive daily contact. Does that mean they're gonna be in contact with every teacher if they're in the secondary? I don't know that yet, we don't have those details yet, but they will have some contact on the day they're home. Elementary kids, of course, will have contact, they have fewer teachers, so they will likely have contact with their teacher. Exactly what it looks like is being recommended to us tomorrow, Monday, Tuesday, shortly, very shortly. And so we'll have more details for that.
And beyond the daily contact, they will have some sort of learning activities that they are expected to do either on their own or participate in. So that's what a remote day
And
is
it,
going
and
to
it could
look
be
like.
pre-work, it could be some sort of prerequisite work that they do in preparation for what they're gonna see when they are live with the teacher. And it could be, you know, independent practice after the teacher has taught them their lesson the last time they saw them.
Or an extensive or extension type project that they're expected to do.
Many teachers work in several buildings and also coach sports, so do substitutes. What happens if one building has a case, then they go to another building? Do both buildings end up quarantining? Do we have a plan in place for that?
We will work with the Department of Health on that.
Okay. How will you accept a person back into school if they've had a fever or been sent home? Do they have to bring any paperwork or anything?
So there are guidelines in the 145-page document as well as the Department of Health related to that. I couldn't tell you the exact process right now, but we will be doing it within the guidelines, within what the Department of Health advises us to do at that time, our medical director and our nurse coordinator. I think it's going to be a very individual situation unless we become in a situation, as we did in March when we closed, where Rockland County was so infected that at that point, they stopped contact tracing and just shut us down altogether.
Hopefully that won't happen again.
Right. But again, any eventual shutdown, if we do go completely remote, would be a decision made by the Rockland County Department of Health or the governor. That's not our intention.
What, at the high school level, will the AP honors or college level courses be held, or,
Yes.
okay, and what about regents? Do we know anything about that
We don't
this
know
year?
anything about Regents exams, we don't know anything about 3 through 8 testing. And honestly, I don't expect to hear a decision about that until we see how the fall goes.
Will there be pre-recorded lessons for kids?
In some cases, yes, not necessarily in all cases.
Does this did we cover everything on that list?
I think
Pretty
we
much.
did. I think we covered everything.
Oh,
And-
you know, here's something. Some people are asking, do they get their kids their own devices? Can you bring your own home device into school?
So we need to talk about that a little bit, just because there are some security measures that are somewhat risky if kids are bringing their own device to school. So that's something we may work out in August and have the details available. But remember that we have a device for your child. But we wanna make sure we're protecting our network. You know, viruses aren't coming in, everything is going through our firewall, our internet filters. So there's some technical stuff that's needs to be worked out.
And one of our assists here is Eric Coronado, the tech director, and as Mrs. Weber is speaking, you can't see, but he's shaking his head, yes, yes, yes. We need to work all that out before we let any devices in.
Lots of thank yous.
Thank
Lots of
you.
you are doing
Thank
great.
you.
Thank you. I just want to say, I made a little joke to Mr. Coronado earlier, and I said, let me know when we get up to 800
So what
people
are we?
viewing, and we were over 800. At the height, we were over at about 850 people watching. So I want to thank all of you 850
What
people.
about-
That's,
It's amazing. It is amazing.
Yeah,
It's absolutely amazing.
It's really fun.
you know, I started the first meeting, you may recall, if you're one of the parents that was on the very first meeting with had about 50 parents on it, I started saying, you guys are my heroes, because we went on this closure and you were thrown into a world where you were at home working and you were teaching your children. Mrs. Weber is one of those heroes as well, as is Jenny Mermelstein, who's sitting here with us, and Eric, I believe. I felt fortunate. We went home. I had a senior in high school who was already in the last half of his senior year, and that didn't mean that was as much of an issue for me. But really, what you have done with your children from March onward has been amazing. And we're here with you with it. We will support you in whatever look September has, so that we're all in this together, building an educational environment that assists your child.
Can we hold another session when we know what finally our plan is going to be?
So-
That's our plan.
Dr.
It's
Castaldo and I
definitely our
talked about
plan.
that, and I said, you know, we could do it after we hand the plan in, but then the governor could just, you know, do his thing. So what I suggested to Dr. Castaldo is that we wait to see what the governor says. And then we'll hold another session, because that will have narrowed down then. Our plan will be done. He will have narrowed us down to what we're doing, and we will definitely hold another session then. And that will help us narrow our focus a little bit.
There's a couple of comments on here about thinking about separating kids by grades, not last name, so like having just 9th and 10th graders be on AA and 11th and 12th BBB.
So one of the challenges with that is at the high school, classes are so fluid. While there are a number of classes that are only 9th graders, and there are a number of classes that are only 12th graders, there are a lot of classes that have multiple grades in them. And then if all the 9th graders are there, then 9th grade English is full, and we can't socially distance, we need another teacher. So it is something, that has been proposed, but it's hard in an operational way, it's very hard to do.
Right. And our numbers would not allow us to do it. It really is something we can't pull off within the 6 feet of distance.
Thank you so much for everything, you guys are incredible. Please talk about special needs children.
Okay, are there specifics as to what we should talk about?
I'm doing this.
So of course, the Board of Regents plan does allow us to consider bringing in, as Mrs. Weber mentioned before, the highest needs, those high needs, special needs students. So we're looking at that as possibly being a piece of our plan, and we'll have more details on that. I know many of the families that responded to the survey that did have a student who has special needs, they would like at least that blended experience or that 4 or 5 day a week experience for their child. So we're looking to see if we can fit those numbers in that way. If that is not possible, we would be looking at a robust, very robust remote environment for those children, meaning that we would take, say, the 1-to-1 aide that is with your child when your child is in school, would be shadowing them on the remote environment as well. We had started doing that in the spring and had success with that. So we're waiting for the recommendations of the teams this week, and then we'll have more details on how to support those special needs students going forward after that.
So just to reiterate, you will see the details for all of the options next Friday.
Yes, in the plan.
Yes.
Is the isolation room separate from the nurse's office? And what
Yes.
accommodations are being made for students who see the nurse every day throughout the day?
So the isolation room by the plans has to be separate from the nurse's office. It will be, if there's a child in it, there will be adult supervision. Students who go to the nurse will not be in contact with that child who's being isolated at that time. That's important so that we don't have cross exposures at all.
Will there be more mental health options for kids?
Definitely. We're looking at increasing just the way we pick up on students who have mental health needs. Again, that survey indicated 50% of the parents of the 1,600 families that responded said that they noticed a change emotionally or behaviorally in their child. We're going to be looking for you to kind of let us know who those kids are, speak to your child's teacher about it. We'll put in right away some trauma-sensitive practices in the classroom. The children have been through a lot. We've all been through a lot. So we're going to be looking to supporting their successful transition back to school, supporting their emotional growth in a positive direction once they are here with us.
Good. Do you think the plans that we put in place are going to be for the whole year, or?
That's very hard to say, and I did actually, I got a question here about, are we ready to go to regular, traditional 100% all in, if things should change? And the way we're setting up these plans is that we can transition between them when need be. I believe if a vaccine comes out and is readily available, and I just read a very promising article from Pfizer in Rockland County working on a vaccine. They just got $2 billion from the federal government to try and get 100 million vaccinations out by January. If that, assuming they get FDA approved, if that comes to fruition, I do think the second half of this year will look very different and will look more traditional. I'm hopeful. I mean, we're all here because we love school and we love education. We want it to be that way, but of course we have to keep kids safe. So I think that a lot of us going fully present has to do with the existence of a vaccine.
And the vaccine would have to be effective enough that they eliminate the 6 feet of social
Yes.
distancing.
Yes.
So we could still be wearing masks, we could still be sanitizing, but we need that 6 feet of distancing gone because we can't fit the students in the classrooms because of the
So
6
the
feet.
question is if you are 6 feet apart, you don't necessarily have to wear a mask. And if the kids are 6 feet apart, they still do.
It's safer for the kids, it's safer for everyone to be wearing a mask. We want people to wear masks as much as possible. It's just safer. You never know when someone's gonna sneeze. You never know when someone's gonna walk by. I mean, we have it, you know, we've been back at central office this summer, and it's like every time I get up to go, I have my own office. So I have the, you know, pleasure of having my own office, and I don't have to worry about sharing an office and breathing on someone else. But every time I get up to go to the bathroom, I'm like, oh my God, where's my mask? Where's my mask? You know, it's just, we wanna make sure that there's no incidental contact.
Will there be will there like mask breaks?
I was just gonna say,
Absolutely.
there will be mask breaks. Clearly, students will not be eating with the masks on. They will have time to go, okay, everybody take your mask off. Maybe
Right.
we'll do some of that mindfulness at those times.
Right.
So to work that into the day, so we're doing some really positive
Right.
socio-emotional boost at the same time as doing a mask break, keeping the students occupied during the mask break so they're not tempted to get up and walk around because that's what we can't have happen.
And that's another reason for outdoor breaks.
Mhm.
And, you know, we want to encourage our teachers, particularly in September and October, which tend to be beautiful months here, you know, take doing read alouds outside, having the kids come out with the little whiteboards, having, you know, secondary come out with the articles they're reading and their device. We are looking to extend our Wi-Fi into some of our outdoor spaces, so that we'll be able to use our devices there, just as often as if we have the kids outside and socially distance, and that's a opportunity for them to take their mask off.
There's some more BOCES things, but really we're waiting. BOCES didn't put any of their plans in yet.
No, we don't
right?
have
So,
plans yet.
What about, I know that we're gonna talk about this, but just that we will tell people the types of masks that are involved, that are allowed, things that.
For the most part, for the kids, it's anything. It's the disposable ones, it's the cloth ones. For the kids can really wear anything. For the teachers, and we'll have the you know, the little inexpensive blue
Right,
blue ones.
The blue ones that everyone sees, they
Yeah.
are not encouraged or required to wear like N95s, nor would we want that because we don't want to take that away from the medical personnel, first responders that may need it. It's just those ordinary masks everyone's wearing.
Yeah. So how, are students still able to bring water bottles and drink water in class? How will that look?
It's a great question.
Yes, because we can't be using the regular water fountains.
Yeah.
We have some of those new water fountains at the middle school where you put a bottle up to it. Those water fountains are okay, but any water fountain that you're drinking out of separately,
Yeah.
we're gonna have to disable
The
those. And so
refillables
are okay.
stations, they're allowed to use.
Right, so then you would be sending
then
in your
you-
child with a water bottle is fine, they're gonna do their mask
And then we
and their
use-
water bottle the same way you would do it,
Yeah.
as Mrs. Weber is demonstrating, that same way, but that would be a good idea to send children in with.
What about fire drills, active shooter drills, all of the mandatory?
So we are required to still have all the mandatory drills, and if we're on an AA and a BB, for the staff, it'll look like we're having double the number of drills, because we have to ensure that AA and BB all participate in all the same drills. There are various different suggestions right now on the region's guidance about doing the lockdowns and what that may look like, so we're still kind of unpacking those. Things like fire drills, students would be expected to walk outside with their masks on, staying as socially distanced as is practical as they're walking outside. Once they're gathered outside, they definitely would be separated by their 6 feet of space, so they're not there on top of each other and then walking back in with the 6 feet of space. They have made allowance that if it's a fire drill or something like that, they may not be exactly 6 feet apart walking outside, and that would be okay. Again, it's gonna look like the double number of drills for anybody who's in the buildings.
If there's a vaccine, will the school district mandate that kids get it?
That's a
The
legal
state-
decision.
I believe the state would mandate it, probably along the lines of all the immunization mandates that we have right now.
And like they did with measles.
Yes.
Do we know what the number of students per subject for the teachers at the high school be?
It varies.
But no more, if there's a, it
No
depends
more
on the
than-
size of the classroom and.
Right.
But we
Yeah.
have such small classes
Not
that,
at the high school, we don't. We have big classes at the high
Do
school.
you think they're as much
High
as
20s.
30?
Nothing's over 30,
Right,
but there's
right.
plenty at 26, 27, 28.
So probably once we split it down the half, you're talking 13, 14, 15 students in their cohort that's
Yeah.
in there during the day with them.
Yeah, we don't know exactly how many children will be in each class in the high school.
No,
No.
we don't know how many kids will be in each class in any school.
In high school.
But it will be what's allowed in that room with the 6 feet of distance.
Mhm.
So we figured out how many students or how many bodies altogether, people altogether can be in each room. And we'll ensure that the classes are assigned to rooms that do fit that number of people, that can accommodate however many people need to be in that classroom.
Okay, and then we still will have school monitors and aides making sure kids are maintaining distance and following the rules.
Okay? We want to thank everyone for your great questions tonight. A few we'll get back to you on. As we mentioned, more details available July 31st in the plan. Then we'll wait to hear from Governor Cuomo the following week, and then we'll hold another session for our community where we can really get into some very detailed specifics and focus on what we know we'll be able to do at that point.
So the last slide of this presentation has the email again, reopeningteam@suffernCentral.org. Please feel free, if you have any other thoughts to share, any specific questions that we can answer the next time we meet, send that into this email and we'll be sure to get a hold of it and bring it up next time. Thank you so much.
And thank you.
Thank you.
Oh my